So that's like the biggest thing I'm focusing on right now, is returning this story fully to my heart and just taking out anybody's bullshit opinions out the freaking window. Hi guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. I hope you're doing well. I'm filming this the day after Beltane, so I'm feeling just like really springy and full of like witchy energy, and I just feel like this is a great time for this particular video. We are going to be talking about the book series that I'm currently working on that has really been consuming my life since 2024 when I first started it. This is not the publishing announcement, okay? We're not there yet, but I'm just at a point where I think about this world and these characters so much. They take up such a huge, unbelievably like expansive part of my brain, and I gotta talk about them. I need to put all of this information somewhere, and I just am tired of waiting to talk about it until it's like officially published and everything. We're just gonna get into it. I want to talk about my process and where I'm at with the book, what's been done already, what I'm currently working on, my plans for the future, my hopes for what's to come. But then I also want to kind of talk about the characters and the world a little bit and the story itself, and just like give you guys a taste of what I've been doing, because again, I'm just really tired of not sharing it. And obviously I'm not gonna like spoil it for you and give you like a full rundown of exactly what's in the book or the plans for the whole series, but just a little something. We're just gonna get into it. We're gonna talk. I hope you guys are ready. I'm very, very excited, as you can probably tell. I'm hoping that this will be kind of part one of a series regarding this work, and I can kind of update you guys as I go along with my process, and as we hit certain milestones and stuff, I'll just continue making little update videos for you guys. So this is pretty much just gonna cover everything from 2024 to now, where I'm at, where I've been, where I'm going. That's the goal for this one. And the timing's really, really great, because if you didn't know, this book in this world is inspired by Bonnie and Kai and the Parkers from the Vampire Diaries. So it is topical for this channel, okay? And Bonkai Day, hopefully this is going up on May 9th, which is the date of the incident, but Bonkai Day is May 10th, so perfect timing. Speaking of TBD, some of what I'm gonna go over in this video I've already talked about over on my Tumblr. It's right here. If you didn't know, I'll have it linked down below. This is probably the best place to get updates on my writing because I'm most consistent over there out of all my social medias. Tumblr hasn't failed me yet, so I will always return. And that's where I post my fanfiction work as well. I mostly write Bonnie and Kai now. I'm in a little bit of a Zutara era. It's not a little bit. I'm back in the fevered craze of my Zutara era. I haven't posted anything for them yet, okay? So most of my writing is Bonnie and Kai centered, but you can find it there. That's also one of the best places to ask questions, because again, I'm most consistent over there. So of course, this video, feel free down below in the comments. But if you want like longer, more detailed replies, Tumblr's probably the place to go for that. So, okay, should we start? Should we start? I can show you what's really fun is that I have like my manuscript printed off in a big binder and everything, but I also have these cutie little books that I had made when I took copies to Chris Wood and Kat Graham when I gave them versions of it, and this makes me so happy. This is actually the one that Chris signed for me. I know, guys, I know! The current working title for book one is The Forgotten Legacy, and I've kind of gone back and forth because I can see that being the name of the series itself, or just the name of the first book. We're gonna wait and see as things unfold. But let me go ahead and read you the blurb at the back of the book. And so you're not just looking at me, I'm gonna like put inspo pictures up on the screen, okay? Once every century, the witches of the world gather together to hold the perilous witch trials. Rhea Hearthstone has spent her life cataloging the histories of other witches. She's contented herself with living a nearly normal life, or as close to one as an overpowered witch with magic that refuses to listen to the simplest of commands can hope for, at least. Elijah Atwood, the eldest of 8 in an ancient and powerful family, has always known his destiny was to die young. It was supposed to be his twin sister Meredith who dealt the final blow. But when she falls mysteriously ill and he is forced to pick a new partner for the upcoming trials, there's only one obvious choice: the third member of their childhood trio, and the only other witch he's ever allowed himself to love. As the secrets that have held the Atwoods together for centuries threaten to finally tear their mysterious house to the ground, Rhea will be forced to choose. Will she forgive the boy she once loved, even after he broke her heart? Or will she stand against him, carving a place in the magical history books under the Hearthstone name for once? Okay, so that's the blurb from the book. If it sounds like something you're interested in and you want to learn more, stay with me. I have no idea how long this video is gonna be. I'm just gonna yap until I'm done yapping. If you're kind of worried about spoilers and you don't want to know anything, I understand, I get it. Maybe this one isn't for you. I'll see you in the next one. It's probably gonna be a deep dive on Avatar: The Last Airbender. Who said that? Anyway, let's get started. So I've always been a writer. That's probably the thing that if you go back in time to little childhood me, she would tell you that's what she wanted to do. I forgot about that part of myself for a hot minute there because I had a very, very discouraging language arts teacher that tried to ruin my life and break my spirit. She succeeded, but only until I got to high school and I met the most amazing English teacher who reminded me who the fuck I was. And I have not looked back since. I spent a good chunk of my life working on another series that I have that's a duology that I've kind of tabled because it is so expansive and crazy and big. I say, holding up the 8-book series now. Don't worry about it. But my first project after that duology that I had been working on for so long was to start this bonkai inspired story. If you know anything about me, Kai Parker and his story just live in my brain rent free. So it was 2023, I was doing my annual I'm gonna rewatch TVD, but at the time I was also making my TVD recap videos. So I was going through that, watching the show, and something in me just reawoken. Okay, just sat up at full attention, and I remembered how insane I get about Kai Parker, and it just would not go away. So come February of 2024, I busted out the first draft of this book in about a month and a half. Literally insane. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did do that. I have queried off and on a handful of times while I'm still sort of like tweaking and nitpicking the manuscript. And at this point, I've gotten like 3, I think, requests for the full story, which every time I get one of those, I'm like, my God, it's incredible. I thought when I finished that first draft, because it just like flowed out of me like water. It was the most insane story, the way that it just like came out on paper. And that's probably why I'm so genuinely attached to it, because a lot of people will tell you like first drafts are so hard and so not simple and they don't make any sense and blah, blah, blah. This book, like the first draft of this book, it was so solid, guys, and it's only gotten better the more I've tweaked it, but like the very first draft, I was like, damn, how did this happen? I thought that I would need a break after I wrote that first draft, but I am not exaggerating when I tell you that these guys just like never shut up in my head. I just started working on the other stories pretty immediately afterwards, and I've just been picking away at them. The difference is that I'm not really writing these other ones front to back. I'm just sort of jumping around. I have multiple documents. I have like a 300-page research doc, I have a timeline document, and then each book has their own document, plus a master doc that just has like random bits and pieces from all of them in it. Currently, the plan for this series is to have 8 books, each one following the Atwood siblings. My best friend, when I pitched the idea to her, she was like, oh, so it's like Bridgerton with witches. Witcherton. And that's like the most perfect way of describing it in my opinion, because it is like a very similar trajectory of just like you're following each sibling down the line. The first 3 books, however, go together in like a trilogy type way. The 4th book takes you back to the parents' story, so it's like a prequel kind of, following the aftermath of the trilogy. So it's split between the 2 timelines. And then the remaining 4 books follow the rest of the siblings. I think they're gonna be more like spin-offs, where kind of like if you read the Folk of the Air series, so like how the first story is Jude and Cardan, and then later on we pick up with her little brother. Cardan and Jude are still in those stories, but we're just getting like bits and pieces of them instead of it really following them from here on out. I thought initially when I first like finished Eli and Rhea's book, I was like, wow, I'm never gonna write their POV again. Damn, that sucks. No, no, no. They're gonna stay. Because this is my world and I make the rules. I am God when it comes to this story. They're gonna stay. So you're always going to hear from Rhea and Eli inside the other books. It just may shrink a little bit depending on how much it matters, whether or not they're present in the story. Once I wrote that first draft, I gave it to my beta readers pretty immediately, and we all just like grouped up in the documents talking about it and leaving notes and having questions and stuff like that. I did another draft, and then that version was read by a handful of people, and that's the one that got given to Kat Graham in December of 2024. Here's a picture. She was so unbelievably sweet. I've talked about it at length, but this was like one of the coolest things ever, because I almost wasn't able to give it to her, and she had me come to her autograph table anyway to pass it over, and I cannot stress enough how sweet and kind and amazing she is. Fast forward another couple months, I had made a few small edits, and I gave a copy to Chris in April of 2025. That weekend was literally insane, because not only did I get to see Kat again, but obviously I saw Chris and the entire Gemini Coven. I got to stand in front of all of them and tell them, hey, you guys inspired a book series and I'm working on it and it's so cool to look at you. Like I have again talked about that at length before as well, but it was so freaking cool. And Chris was like so unbelievably sweet about it, because he is definitely a guy who likes heroes. He's made that pretty clear. I think it's kind of the stories he prefers, but in the canon of TBD, he's the bad guy, okay? We're not supposed to root for him the way that I do. So it was really nice to get to like look him in the eyes and be like, you know, obviously what happened to Kai happened to Kai. I wrote this entire book to give him a second chance. Okay? It was very important to me that he got that second chance. And when I told him that, he just like melted into the table and was just like, thank you, that's really cool. Like, he was just so unbelievably sweet about it. Over the past year or so, I've been working on the other, like the 3 books that come after this first one, plus kind of nitpicking with this manuscript a little bit. But I did also take a significant amount of time in 2025 away from the first book, just to focus on the other ones and also other projects. I had a lot of fan fiction I was working on, and there was just like a lot happening in 2025. It was a very big year for both me and my husband's families. We had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. It's why I wasn't on YouTube very much. That's why I wasn't on YouTube last month either, guys, but it's fine. I just feel like there's been a lot in the air recently for all of us, okay? Especially my people living in America. It's insane right now, but we're hanging on, and my characters in my silly little world in my head keep me hanging on, okay? I did query a few more times off and on, again, just like when I had the energy for it, because querying is such a full-time job. It takes a lot out of you, especially when you're getting the rejections. You have to be in the right mental state for it, because for me personally, I believe in this book wholeheartedly. So even when I get the rejections, it just doesn't, they don't bother me the way that I expected them to, because like, yes, this book means a lot to me and is important to me, but I also just deeply believe that it's good. So I know that at some point it will be picked up. I just don't know how long I'm gonna have to wait for that. And that's the point where I'm at now, where I'm like, I can't keep waiting to talk about it. And I did in 2025 get 3, I think, requests for the full manuscript, which was like literally the coolest feeling in the entire world. Oh, and it made me just even more sure that the pitch is good, the material's good, it's just not necessarily what people are looking for. And I knew that I was getting myself into that when I started querying the book, because I'm a fantasy writer, and more than that, I lean towards romantasy. I don't always have the focus be the relationship. Like, I'm a found family writer at heart, so I love a big cast. I love for the supporting characters to get to do their own things and like lots of little subplots and stuff like that. But at the core, the stories are about a couple. They're not always going to be, well, we'll get into that. But I'm writing romance a lot of the times is the point. And so the market is so saturated. The industry as a whole is so unbelievably oversaturated, okay? It is what it is. But there are readers. People are hungry for these kind of stories. I'm hungry for these kind of stories, so I'm not going to stop writing them just because it's a little bit harder to get published right now. Where I'm at right now currently with the first manuscript, I'm doing like a full-on paper redraft, which I don't normally do. I almost always write exclusively on my computer, but I'm going through and redlining on paper, which has been very fun, and I'm hopeful that this will be the last redraft before it gets officially picked up. It hasn't been officially line edited by anybody but me, but I have a degree in creative writing and English, and then one of my beta readers also has an English degree, and I trust her judgment pretty implicitly when it comes to stuff like that, because she will tell me if that shit's ugly. She will, every time. One of the biggest things that I'm focusing on in this current redraft is actually the length. So the first draft of the book was like 160K or something like that. And I went back through and I cut that boy down to about 130. I did that because I was, cutting out what I felt like was kind of fluffy or didn't need to be there in certain places. But it was also what a lot of the requirements for current fantasy publications are. I personally think that that's very short. And that's just me. The stories that I like and the books that I read tend to be quite big, quite expansive, very sprawling stories. That's what I'm drawn to. So I fear that the misstep I made in that first couple draft process was shrinking myself for the industry. So as I'm going back into this draft now, I'm pulling from the very original manuscript and lengthening things back out because I've always wanted it to be longer. I don't know if I want it to be a full 160K again, but I want it to be longer. I want there to be more lore. I want the lore to be more immersive. I don't want to fall into the trap of like skimping out on things and cutting things out that I really enjoy because certain publishing houses are going to be like, ugh, it's too long. Nobody's going to read it. I would read it. And at the end of the day, like, I'm writing this for myself. I know my readers are out there and you guys are going to love this stuff. But it's mine first and foremost, so I need to enjoy it. That's like the biggest thing I'm focusing on right now, is returning this story fully to my heart and just taking out anybody's bullshit opinions out the freaking window, okay? It's coming back to me where it belongs. I'm assuming I'm gonna add back at least 100 pages, maybe a little less than that, but I'm just like not gonna shrink myself for these arbitrary guidelines anymore. We're done with that. The second biggest thing I'm focusing on is character descriptions, specifically with Rhea and her family. I thought I made certain things very, very clear when it comes to distinctions between the two families, and yet one of my beta readers made it through the entire thing thinking Rhea and her family were white. That can never happen again. Never again. No, 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 no. I'm honestly genuinely so unbelievably bad at describing characters because I personally like, the one thing I don't like in a book is when you're reading and it gets to like the love interest and suddenly you've got like 5 paragraphs on the shape and color of his eyes and the way his hair falls and and it goes both ways, right? Like I also don't like when main characters look in the mirror for the first time and then describe themselves to you in detail. I hate that. In fact, I skim it most of the time. But the problem with that becomes that then when it's my own work, I tend to be like, his eyes are blue, her skin is brown. Stop. And like, I just don't. I know what they look like, and so I'm like, you're in my head with me. You know what they look like too. No, babe, that's not how it works. You do have to put a little bit more on the page. So I'm focusing on that this time around because, again, I thought I made it clear, and I would just like to say that out of the 7 beta readers I've had read this book, only one of them whitewashed Rhea, okay? So I did my job. Everybody else knew what she looked like, but I would just like to do my utmost to remove the possibility of that ever happening again. And especially with a cast this big and the way the coven systems work, where it's like across cultures and ethnicities and stuff like that, I just want to be very clear about who I'm writing about, and so none of you guys are confused. That's the goal. I actually have aphantasia. I don't know if I've talked about that before, but it's just black in here. I can't see anything. But I've been told that because of that, probably, the way I describe things on page is like really easy for people to see 9 times out of 10. So I know I can do it. I can paint the picture for you guys. I'm just focusing on going back and doing it as best as I possibly can. In a similar vein to descriptions on the characters, the lore is another thing that I'm really wanting to focus on with this redraft. Just making sure that it's clear and the picture you have of it is what you need for this first book. What I think is really interesting about having Rhea and Eli be the dual POVs is that her family are historians, so she has a lot of knowledge about covens, even though she's not technically part of one herself. And I think I want to give more of that to her character. Like, I feel like I just didn't give her enough opportunities to really utilize that knowledge, especially with the way that she like moves through the groups, because she's quite ostracized in a lot of ways because of the way that she grows up. And then on the flip side, Eli is from one of the more prominent, kind of intense covens, and he hates it. So Ray is over here with all this knowledge and nowhere to really put it. Eli has been living in it and he's miserable. So they just have a nice contrast there that I think I could play with a little bit more in terms of like how they sprinkle lore into the story, and it would give readers more to hold on to. The thing is that their book is also like a mystery in some ways, and they're trying to figure things out. So there's knowledge that they don't have that we obviously can't have yet either. I'm just trying to figure out like how much more I want to weave into it that you're then gonna like need to figure out later on as the world continues to grow. Let's touch on a couple things that I'm like exploring inside the book itself. Childhood trauma is a big special interest of mine, if you could call it that. Sort of just unpacking what that looks like in adulthood and zooming in on the different ways that it affects families has always been something that interests me, which is why Kai and the Parkers are a storyline that has always affected me so much. Obviously in TVD, we meet Kai and 3 of his siblings. The other 4 are no longer with us, so we can't ask them what it was like growing up in that household, but we can all kind of assume it wasn't awesome from what we're told. With my Atwood family, I wanted to look at the effects of a dynamic like that amongst the entire family. How does it affect each child differently? How do they then interact inside the family unit as a whole? What are their relationships with their parents? Do they all feel differently about mom and dad? And that has been so unbelievably fun to like look at and unpack and analyze. It's led me down a lot of healing for myself in terms of like learning new things and kind of exploring my own trauma throughout them. Because I'm utilizing flashbacks inside the storytelling, you get to kind of piece through Eli's journey with him. So we meet him at 22 and you're looking at this person who acts in a very specific way. He's very avoidant, he's very lonely, like something is like not, he's not great, right? When we meet him on page. And then you see him in flashbacks being this like sweet, loving child that is like slowly being morphed into who we know in the present day. And I really loved what the flashbacks brought to the story as a whole, because again, it's for all the siblings. Like you're kind of seeing bits and pieces of all of them growing up and then getting to where they are now. So memories and stuff play a really important role in the storytelling, because that's how I personally operate inside the world. I'm just kind of always in this state of like low-level melancholy. And I just feel like I poured that into Eli. So for better or for worse, he and I are one and the same. On that note though, of him being so unwell, found family is another really important like dynamic for me when I'm writing. So I really wanted to highlight like the importance of a really strong support system and what that can do to change somebody's mindset to help them through things. And that kind of leads into the healing and self-acceptance journey that I think quite a few of them go on. It's not just Eli that is like undergoing transformation throughout the story. Rhea also has the beginning of hers. I will say that like there's still a lot when you get to the end of this book that we don't know about Rhea, because Rhea doesn't know those things yet. So this first book really sets up the dynamic of the family, Eli's role in the family, and then the mystery that they're working to unravel. As I said in the blurb, the big like main focus of this first book and like the challenge that our characters are facing is the witch trials. These are held once a century. You've got to be 22 to enter and compete. And what ends up happening is the 9 covens put forth 2 different people. Those 2 people compete as a pair for 8 of the 9 trials. And then the last trial, they fight against each other to the death, and the winner becomes the new holder for the next century. That witch is literally in control of the world's magic. So they're able to draw from it, control it, absolute power. But they only have it for 100 years. My witches live for quite a long time. So in terms of their lifetimes, that's not that much time, but a lot can happen in a century, okay? They have a lot of responsibilities. They have the capabilities to be very, very evil if they so choose. And somehow, Eli's family has been in charge for 500 years. So something's going on there, probably. So the way the power structure works inside those 9 covens, they're like filled with families from all over. And then they have elders in each group. And then above that is the holder. And so the Atwood family is our current family in power. Joshua Atwood is the current holder at the start of the book. So because the Atwoods are from America, they live in Oregon. Of course, that's where the meeting for the trials takes place. So everybody gathers at their home. Not everybody. That'd be so many people, but a lot of witches gather at their home. Each coven has members throughout the world, so they're not just Americans. And I do plan on implementing travel wherever I can inside the story. Rowan's book in particular is going to mostly be set in Ireland because he plans to become a druid. Speaking of lore and adding things in, what is already in the book in terms of like the magical lore that I either pulled from real life or invented, I'm really proud of and really excited to share with you guys. I've always had a really special interest in magic and mythology across cultures and religions. Growing up, I personally really love Celtic and Norse mythology. Those were 2 that like meant a lot to me, which is why I put the Atwoods in that coven so that I could give the kids patron gods that I felt the most comfortable writing about. But in terms of the story as a whole, I zoomed in on 9 different covens from across the globe. Some of them are combined pantheons, but there's obviously so many more pantheons than 9. So some of them, like the Celtic and Norse, are technically combined, and not literally the pantheons are combined, but witches under both just operate in the same coven, okay? But they're separate, if that makes sense. And even with kind of intermingling certain covens across those 9, it's still not going to be all the types of magic and the types of witches that we run into, because while researching, it was really clear that like not every culture was going to have one that fit into the 9 that I had picked. And some groups felt like they made more sense to just be smaller or completely individual solitary practitioners. I'm really excited, like as the story progresses and the series gets bigger, to drop in these characters from different places so that you're really seeing like the extent of magic throughout the world and how different it looks for everybody. All of the magical lore that I included is as accurate as I could hope to be with it. I didn't want to invent new things so much as like pull from what we know. I really wanted to draw from things that a lot of practitioners believe in across the world. So like color magic, herbal magic, candle magic that overlaps across cultures. And then at the same time, enhance the magic system with things like visual elemental spells, enchanted objects, or potions. Just to give you like an example, there's a particular scene during the trials where they're asked to use divination, and I was able to look at each witch's background and pull from what they would do based on their coven. So Rhea reads tarot cards, and then the person across from her is reading a turtle shell. Some people are throwing bones, and it's just been really fun for me to involve such a high level of research into the story. I think I found a way to make it feel really natural, that like you're just sort of learning with the different characters as other people show up and like bring their own magic into the world. On that note though, some practices are closed. And so it was very important to me because I do have a character who will be a main character at one point who is part of a closed practice. And it's going to adjust the way that I write about him because I'm not going to put his stuff on page the way that I've done for other characters. So I think also that's been a fun challenge of like navigating, you know, I don't want to not write about that background of witchcraft, but I'm also not going to put it on page. I want to talk about the characters a little bit, and this is where we're gonna like tiptoe into spoiler land a little, just a little, okay? Because God, I want to talk about them so bad. Like I said, I'm a big fan of big cast, ensemble cast. I want everybody to have their own thing going on. I want you to know who everybody is. I want you to fall in love with all of them separately, okay? That way, if anything happens to anybody, it hurts across the board. That's what I'm here for. That's what I want to deliver to you. My OCs definitely are not one-to-ones when it comes to their counterparts from the TVD world. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want this to be a fan fiction. And in my opinion, it's not. Like, there's some very specific similarities that they share. And then I just went crazy with the lore and the world building and the expansion. Lost my mind a little bit. But God, it's been fun. Let's start with my baby Eli. I've talked quite a bit about how I personally relate to Kai, and that's why his story is so important to me. The same can be said about Eli, okay? I put so much of myself into him and Rhea specifically. There's a lot of me in there, okay? If you know me in real life, no you don't. I think that Eli is significantly softer than Kai in a lot of ways, specifically because he has a support system growing up. So like, yes, he self-isolates, yes, he still has avoidant tendencies, but he's also very close to and beloved by his siblings. That being said though, he still has a temper. He's sarcastic, he is stubborn to a damn fault. He's got a very strong sense of judgment that doesn't always steer him correctly. I feel like he can be very cynical sometimes, and the like darker part of his personality can be very hard for the people around him to like relate to and tolerate, because when he gets dark, he gets real dark, and it happens really quickly. If you've read my fanfiction and you liked Kai's dynamic with other people in the Hits Different universe, I feel like you're gonna like Eli because I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. Something that I think is very easily glossed over with Kai is that self-sacrificing element to his character. And so for Eli, I was like, I'm gonna make that a flaw. So while Eli is very, very, very particular when it comes to like who's in his bubble, if you're in his bubble, he will go to hell and back for you happily. Well, he will go to hell and back for you, complaining the entire time, still getting it done. With that self-sacrificing element, he's significantly less selfish than Kai, but like I said, he's still an avoidant. He's an avoidant nightmare at times, because when he feels cornered or trapped, he just shuts down immediately, and you couldn't beat words out of him. I'm gonna be honest with you, he just won't talk. So there's like multiple situations that he gets into where he's just like mute. He is also my favorite brand of like domestic idiot, so we get to see him doing a lot of the cooking and a lot of the help with the younger kids. And because we're in his head so often, we get to see him struggle with balancing being a good brother and loving them as much as he genuinely does, with the resentment that he feels dealing with the brunt of the abuse in the family. I'm not gonna tell you what his magic is, but just know that I took the Gemini Coven lore and I made it worse. Then we have my girl Meredith. She's the second born younger twin, and instead of having her flip on Eli the way that Joe does with Kai, I made Meredith loyal to a fault. The twins are very much a unit. They're like those stray cats at the shelter that say like, don't separate, bonded pair. That's these two. Codependency final boss, honest to God. She's very much an anchor point for Eli, and her presence in his life is one of the things that keeps him the most grounded. To honor Joe's canon path of medicine, I made Meredith a healer, so she's the one always brewing up potions, she's always got herbs. Meredith is like significantly more forthcoming with her emotions. She's very whimsical. Look at her clothes, my whimsical baddie. She wants to see the good in people and the good in the world and what has been done to them and what they're living through. While it like dampens her a little bit, she maintains that hope. She really loves being a big sister, and she's super involved with the other kids. Her and Eli in a lot of ways act as parental figures. They're both 22, so they're technically, you know, truly young adults. And considering how distant the parents can be at times, they do act as like heads of the family more often than not. Oh, my baby Parker. Guys, I can't stress enough how much I love him, okay? So when I was designing Parker, what ended up happening was, obviously, like I said, Kai and Eli are not a one-for-one dynamic. Not all of Kai's like silly, goofy humor fit into Eli. Eli is silly, goofy, okay? But it's so rare for it to come out of him, because when we meet him in this first book, baby is depressed. So unbelievably unwell, but I didn't want to just like not have that personality anywhere on the page, so all of that went into Parker. All of it. He's the third born, and he acts as basically like a smoke screen for Eli, so his personality is like big and funny and silly and loud, so that no one's looking at Eli. He's just trying to like keep him out of the spotlight as much as possible by taking it for himself, but in like a loving way. Not because he's an asshole, okay? Parker is so unbearably kind. Can't stress that enough. Good, sweet boy. But he is a chaos gremlin. Also can't stress that enough. Atwoods are all very fiercely loyal, and Parker is no different, but he's also hot-headed. He got like the bulk of Kai's temper put into him, so he's explosive in his own ways, and he's prone to his own magical issues because of that. He's definitely the most reluctant of the older siblings. He's not super into having responsibility put on his shoulders, terrified of intimacy on all levels. He walks this like very thin line of like loving them and putting up with them, but also like really would rather be on his own, but he doesn't want to leave, because then what if he leaves and something happens to Eli? He can't do that. He winds up in this role of like the perfect son to make up for all of Eli's issues, which obviously doesn't go well for him either. All of Kai's snacking habits also got put here. He will eat you out of house and home. Do not show him where the pantry is. Okay, now Liv Parker is and always has been my girl. Hazel is no different. She's probably the most similar in terms of temperament. So she's snarky, more difficult to understand, but balanced out with that same loyal protectiveness towards her family. Something that really happened across the board with the Atwoods is that they are very much bonded by this abuse that they're undergoing, and so instead of turning on each other and starting to fight, they're the family that like sticks together and tries to get each other through it. I leaned into the bond that I love exploring with Kai and Liv inside Hazel and Eli, so they have their own like unique little relationship. That's the other thing that was like so fun about working with this many OCs at once, is that the dynamics are different for each pair of siblings. A lot of the times, you know, Eli and Meredith partner together and Parker and Hazel go together, but then you have moments where like Parker is with Lorelai or Hazel's with Eli. You just get to see the way that they interact differently with each other depending on like the situation and the setting, like who trusts each other more, who's confiding in the other one more, and it changes. You know, sibling dynamics are always evolving, so it's just been so cool and fun to work with. I haven't started her book yet because it'll be number 5, and so I've got some time until I get there, okay? But I'm excited to explore a relationship dynamic because I kind of know who she's gonna end up with. I have a base idea, right, for all of the books, so like I think I know, unless something happens to him, who's to say? But if nothing goes wrong between now and book 5, I know who she'll be with, and it's gonna have like a similar dynamic to Parkwood, which I think is gonna be really fun with the banter, like the starting out kind of like weird enemies because she doesn't want to get attached, and like the banter back and forth to rapidly falling in love with each other and being like so crazy. I will not be having him murder her. That's not gonna happen, so don't even stress about that, because no, I'm never touching that. No. Lorelai is the first OC that had nobody to compare to inside the TVD universe. In terms of like taking after her siblings, she is very empathetic, just like Meredith, but then very quiet, like Eli. She's 15 at the start of the story, so she's still technically in school and taking classes. She's one of the quieter siblings, so she's often like observing kind of off to the side instead of like really getting involved, but she does spend a lot of time looking after the youngest twins. Rowan is the one that I mentioned wants to become a druid. He's only 12 in the start of the first book, so I'm still getting to know him. His personality is kind of evolving as we go. So in that vein, Rowan is very bookish. He's very smart. And in this first book, he is the only sibling still close to their father, Joshua. It makes his dynamic really unique because the rest of the older siblings don't really want anything to do with Joshua at this point. They distrust him for different reasons across the board, all of which kind of circle back to Eli, but it's much more than that in this world. Rowan is the one who needs him because he wants something outside of the family for his path, so he's gonna have to move, he's gonna have to get higher up in the coven, and so pulling away from Joshua would affect that, but not pulling away from him affects his relationship with his siblings. So it's just been interesting to navigate, you know, they obviously love him and also know that he is 12. So they don't hold it against him, but it means that like he can't be part of all the different sibling discussions, and like some stuff has to be kept away from him because he can't be trusted with it because he will run off and tell Joshua everything because again, he is 12. And then the babies, Adam and Abigail, are 6. I think I may have said 4 a couple times in this video. My bad, they're 6. I wanted them to have more expressive personalities, and I wanted them to be able to talk fully. I both know the most and the least about these guys because they have bullet points of lore throughout the rest of the books, but also they're 6 years old. So I have to learn them on page. they're still literally growing up in front of me. So I don't know them that well yet, but oh my God, they're adorable. They're also the same level of bonded that Meredith and Eli have. So the twins in this world are just very intense love and devotion from the twins. Okay, so Mama Blythe, I love her. I love her. She's one of my favorite characters. My beta readers have been pretty much divided down the middle. Some of them adore her just like me. Some of them hate her. Hate her. I was so unprepared for the amount of readers that I've had look at her and go, no, you said they had a nice mom. And I'm like, she is nice. What are you talking about? She's so nice. And so apparently Blythe is hit or miss, all right? But I like her. I can't really get into her relationship with Joshua because that will lead us into spoiler land rapidly, and we don't want to do that yet, okay? But I think that that's where the bulk of people's issues with her come from. But all will be explained in due time, all right? I'm a writer who, if I tell you information, if I give you what you think is a red herring, it's not. It's not a red herring. It will be explained in books 2 through 8, I promise. Also, don't forget that the kids are unreliable, okay? Our narrators are always going to be unreliable because they only know what they know. So everybody's version of each other is different, and that's why, again, they all have different dynamics inside the family, different relationships between each other. So what Eli thinks of Blythe is very different from what Meredith thinks of Blythe, is very different from what Parker thinks of Blythe. You know, we just went over that with Rowan, and I think that's a really great way of looking at it. Eli favors Blythe, cannot stand Joshua. Rowan likes Joshua, has an iffy relationship with Blythe because of how close he is with Joshua. She is originally from England, but moved over with Joshua in the 1900s, and for some reason we never really hear about where she came from or who she left behind or why she left them behind. That probably means nothing. And then we have Papa Atwood, Joshua. Listen, I set out to make him the true villain, and I did my best to commit to the fucking bit. My beta readers have told me across the board that he is despicable and terrible and awful and needs to be taken out back. So as someone with a history of dealing with very toxic men, I think I wrote him very, very well. He's just the worst. I'm really not sure what else I can say. Just picture a cross between Cole from Charmed, who I love and adore, Joshua Parker himself, and John Winchester. And you've got him. There he is. Let's talk about the Hearthstones. Rhea is so, God, it's so funny because it's like, Eli is special to me because Eli is me. I see myself in Eli and I'm like, yes. Rhea is also me, but in a very different way. So Bonnie Bennett has been one of my favorite female characters for, at this point, over a decade of my life. And it honestly felt more than a little daunting trying to figure out what I would do to fix her story, because her story is so bad. If you are part of the TVD fandom, loving Bonnie Bennett is like a curse because what she goes through is insane. And it just doesn't get better. There's never a season where you're like, yay, things are good for her now. It's just like train wreck after train wreck after train wreck. And I didn't want to do that to Rhea, but I also didn't want to ignore the overlaps that I wanted for them. So what I'll say is, when you read the book, when you see what Rhea's gone through, when you see what Rhea goes through, specifically in this first book, just know that I am at my core a happily ever after writer. So I don't want to erase the stuff that, made me interested in Bonnie, because the big part of her journey throughout the show is influenced by grief, and that is the part of her that I have always related to the most. I knew that Rhea had to be influenced by grief in probably a few different ways so that it would kind of, bleed into her character and show up where I needed it to show up. But I also wanted her to explore that grief on page in a way that Bonnie never gets to, okay? I relate to Bonnie because I know what those experiences feel like, and I'm able to imagine what we're not seeing off screen. We don't actually see Bonnie work through her stuff on screen. That just doesn't happen. She's never given that chance. So with Rhea, I was like, no, you're gonna deal with it on page with us. We're gonna see you grow from this. We're gonna see you work through it, understand it, unpack it, and then become somebody else at the end of it. But it's gonna take time. And because we're also doing that with Eli and the stuff that he's going through and growing from, they kind of have to balance each other. And so, like I mentioned before, we don't know everything about Rhea at the beginning of this story because she doesn't know everything yet. There's missing pieces of her childhood that, in the same vein that we're trying to figure out, what's going on with Eli and his family, we're also learning things that bring up questions for Rhea and her family. While I think this first book really focuses on Eli and setting up the story, you get specific, like I said, my little red herrings. You get those moments of like, wait, but what does that mean for Rhea? You're going to find out. We are gonna unpack the fuck out of her family history because it's juicy. And I had so much fun figuring it out and like building a history for her, because again, when you're looking at TVD lore, the Bennetts are just like lost to time. We don't know anything. We have like the barest bones about the Gemini Coven and the Bennett family, and they're like two of the most powerful things in the canon universe, and we just don't know anything. So I just took all those little tiny scraps and then I threw in a ton of my own scraps, and then I stirred it all up and kept what I wanted from that. And I'm very happy with it. And I hope you guys will be too when the time comes. Some key things that I changed, in the same vein of like wanting Rhea to go through things on page, I wanted her to have a support system also on page. So I gave her a few select people that are locked in with her from the beginning to the end. They're not going anywhere, trust me. Not only does she have her own, side family members that she's interacting with regularly, but she has close friendships with both Eli and Meredith. So her dynamic with the twins themselves is also really unique, and we get to watch that evolve as well. Part of Rhea's trauma and what she is like working through on page is this feeling of like her magic is very unpredictable. You learn that in the blurb. She has a ton of power, and for some reason, she's not great at controlling it. This leads to a plethora of issues inside her personal life, because how does she go out into the world if she can't control her magic? And she's not supposed to tell people she's a witch. It leaves her with this feeling of being too much in a lot of ways, because she like quite literally has too much magic, and then that sort of just feeds into her self-perception and like the way she interacts with other people around her. So what I'm really excited about is as things change for her and we figure out more and more about what's going on, she may or may not be able to fix things. What does it look like when she's in a healed body? What does that do for her mind? What does that do for her relationships when she's finally herself without any of those fears layered onto it? Rhiannon is our Graham's character, and as I said, I will spoil this for you now. I won't be killing her. No, thank you. Rhea loses her parents when she's a young girl, and it was very, very important to me that she had a strong and prominent adult figure in her life, and that is Rhiannon. Rhiannon loves her. She supports her. She is the one training her and helping her, make peace with the fact that her magic is wild and untamable. I mentioned that they age slower in this world, so she only looks like she's in her 30s, but her energy and her presence are like ancient and like really powerful. I wanted to capture that same like lovely, sweet dynamic with the like feisty fierceness that Sheila has. She's the head of the Hearthstone family and pretty prominent inside not the coven, but just the magical landscape because of her power. And despite the fact that she could like really cause a ruckus in the magical world if she wanted to, she has chosen to live a very peaceful, quiet life amongst humans. I didn't make her a professor like Graham's, but she is Rhea's magical teacher, and we'll learn, that she's taught other witches as well. So again, she's very integrated inside the magical community, even though she kind of stays to herself and keeps Rhea away from everything. These are Rhea's parents, Raina and Andrew. Can't tell you much about them, unfortunately, other than the fact that they died when Rhea was very young, despite the fact that her family are historians and they keep notes on everything. There's like no info about her parents. And since we spend the first book in Rhea's POV, we're learning about them very slowly as things may or may not come up. Can't even tell you how much I love this guy. He was inspired by a handful of different characters Ambrose, the cousin from the new Sabrina, this guy from Scooby-Doo, and Sam from Holes, to name a few. Oh, and without spoiling anything, also this guy. Similar to Rhiannon, I wanted him to be this grounded, very strong presence in Rhea's life so that she feels like she has somebody there for her at all times. He is literally her rock, her best friend. After the falling out with the twins, she relies on him even more, and he just has her back in like every way. This is Rhea's familiar Carlisle. I thought I loved this little freak, but when my husband read the book, he was like, I want an entire retelling from Carlisle's POV on my desk tomorrow morning. Chop chop. So the familiars in this world talk, and when you're inside Rhea's POV, you can hear him talking to her. A little bit of magic of their own. They can also draw on their witches, and not everybody has a familiar. Inside Eli's family at the start of the book, nobody has one yet. So Rhea has one, a handful of other kids in the trials have them as well, but it's not a given that you'll end up with one. On that note of the other kids, let's just talk about a few of my favorite side characters that you meet throughout the trials. Ambrose is the trio's like main childhood bully. He's a major antagonist, especially where Eli is concerned. He's from New Orleans, and his family in particular are known for using necromancy, which is kind of feared. Death magic across the board is kind of feared in this world, not by everybody, but kind of by the bulk of people because it can be used against anyone. And the rules of it kind of, if you're thinking about, you know, Expression from TVD, it's kind of in that vein of like, it doesn't necessarily follow the laws of nature that most people want to be focused on. Naomi is a member of the Japanese coven from San Francisco. Her family are fox shifters, so this is her other form. She's a pretty obvious interest in Eli that may or may not be nefarious, but she's also besties with Hazel. Oh, I had so much fun with Salem, please! He might be my favorite outside of the family male character so far. He's from the Egyptian coven, and that pantheon has also always been a special interest of mine. My bestie Anastasia is super drawn to them, so I'm very excited to kind of delve more into his lore as time goes on. I know I said the members of the covens are from all over the place. His family is actually one of the ones that lives in Egypt. I'm torn between a few options for cities yet, because again, some of these guys I'm still getting to know, so I need to learn a little bit more about the dynamics of his family before I officially place them somewhere. His patron is Ampu though. We do know that. Arna competes with Salem. They're in a relationship. Her family is known for their extremely talented healing abilities, and Arna is no different. We do get to see her use that more than once. Okay, I know I just said I love Salem, but oh my god. And then just for fun, here are some more. I'm just gonna put them on the screen. This other binder that's like my inspiration binder, and everybody has their own pages with their own notes and just like so many pictures because again I can't see. So I gotta find inspiration where I can find it, okay? But as you can see, I've spent a lot of time with these people and this world and these characters, and I love them so much, and I can't wait to share the full story with you guys one day so that you can meet them officially because god, they're my babies. If you would like to, the first 5 chapters of the book are available on my AO3 right now if you want to check them out. Otherwise, I also have a fairly extensive fanfiction collection. My stories are long, and at the time of this video going up, I also just started posting a new one that's still bonkai, but it's American Horror Story inspired because Tate and Violet took over my brain for a hot minute there. So I think that's all I want to say now. I'm looking at the time on this clip specifically, and I've almost been rambling for an hour. I'm feeling just like really excited right now for like what's to come and the work that's getting done. I feel really good. I feel really inspired. I like the spring apparently. Who knew? Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you so soon. Have a good one. Bye!